Hello and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing really well. Today I am going to be doing a review of Sad Girls by Lang Leav. I've already done a review, it'll be linked in the description, where I don't spoil anything. I just kind of talk about my general thoughts on the book. So if you haven't read it and you don't want to be spoiled, please do click on that. If you don't mind being spoiled, please do continue watching, or if obviously you aren't thinking about picking it up. This is kind of going to be a rant review. I'm warning you now. I tried to balance it out a little bit with some of the things that I liked, but you can see here, like, the green is what I liked and the pink were moments that stood out to me as not so great. So, it's just not very green. Sad Girls is about a girl called Audrey who tells a lie amongst her friends for no apparent reason that another girl they know called Anna is being sexually abused by her father. As a result, this lie kind of spreads around the town, and Anna ends up committing suicide. At Anna's funeral, Audrey meets Anna's boyfriend, whose name is Rad, and the two get on really well and they leave the funeral together. This sparks a lot of drama with Audrey's mother and her friends and her boyfriend Duck for no apparent reason, except that they're all extremely dramatic and none of them trust Audrey, which is ironic considering she's already told us that she's trustworthy or relatively trustworthy, and that's one of the reasons why the lie spread so much. Audrey then goes on to live with the repercussions of telling this lie. She has everything handed to her on a plate, including getting an internship with one of the most acclaimed newspapers in Sydney. She still manages to find time to complain about her relationship with her mother. She isn't there for her friend Candela when she starts abusing drugs in the wake of her grief. Actually, earlier, Audrey and Rad find a locket that was very precious to Anna, and it has a picture of her friend Candela in it, which is never explained. Just no reason at all, apparently. That's not important. But apparently all the drama with her mother and her friends and her boyfriend was for a good reason, because Audrey and Rad end up in a very intense kind of relationship. They do break things off, but they kind of pick things up again when Audrey interviews him because his novella has been very successful and she needs to interview him for this newspaper that she's a part of now. She ends up cheating on her boyfriend Duck, who, by the way, has zero character development and is purely there to further Audrey's character development, and ends up telling Rad the lie that killed his girlfriend. And after that she ends up flying overseas to Colorado, where she goes through some kind of self-development. Nothing really happens, it's kind of boring, and of course there's a boy there, of course he looks like a model, of course he's in love with Audrey, but she has to let him down gently in order to return back home to Australia and to her boyfriend Rad, or her, I guess, ex-boyfriend at this time, because she just can't get over him. And then the novel ends with the death of her friend Lucy's boyfriend, pointlessly again, in order to find out that Rad actually accidentally killed Anna and slit her wrists to cover up the fact that he had killed her, because autopsies obviously don't exist in this novel either, and the two of them end up flying back to America, leaving everyone in bewilderment, not explaining themselves, because the new novel that Rad has written has been picked up in order to be turned into a Hollywood movie, because that's exactly how that works, and neither of them face any repercussions for their actions. The end. Whew. Obviously, a few other things happen. That's just kind of a very brief and kind of ranty go through of the plot. Another thing that the book kind of centers on is Audrey's anxiety, which she develops after telling this lie She ends up having panic attacks and she can't finish her exams. In general, I think the way that it was handled was pretty okay. I think her therapist is a little bit odd. I didn't really like the character. Like when they meet, she's smoking. She's like, oh, I hope you don't mind if I just smoke out this window. So one of the things that I really liked about this novel is the cover. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. If you're going to judge a book by its cover, you would probably pick this one up because it is absolutely stunning. It has that nice kind of embossed feeling on the front, and it's kind of like smooth, like that soft matte. It's really nice. Another thing that I enjoyed about the novel was some of the secondary characters. Unfortunately, they weren't developed particularly well, but there were still some really nice moments. Around page 200, Lucy is consoling Audrey because Duck has just come and raged outside of their house. She says, people get dumped all the time and it sucks, but you know what you do? You cry, you smash a few plates, you go to a karaoke bar and make a fool of yourself. However you choose to deal with it, it's your shit to handle, it's your burden to carry. You don't drag other people down with you. You don't turn up on the doorstep in the middle of the night acting like a raving lunatic. Which I think it feels kind of like she's talking to Audrey, but she's also talking to the audience, which I feel as though, considering this is kind of aimed at, like people who are around the same age as Audrey, kind of like 17, 18, that's a nice, that's a nice statement to be making to the audience, and it does feel as though, like she's talking to us. And there are a couple of other moments that Lucy has that are like that, as though she's kind of the voice of reason in this particular novel. There are also quite a few well-written lines or moments in the book. One of them in particular is when Audrey is having therapy, and her therapist Ida says, well, I've got good news for you, you're not a screw-up, it's about running your own race, honey, remember that. Which once again is kind of like, I think one of the reasons why I liked Lucy's character is kind of like talking through Audrey to the audience, which I feel works really well with the first person perspective. The book does get better. Like the first 100 pages or so were really hard for me. Like I just kept being pulled out of it and kind of thinking, oh, like why? But it gets better, and some of the conversations between Rad and Audrey are like kind of nice, like it's just, then it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's, it's just fun to read. Oh, it has this little, I forgot to mention this, it has this little kind of part at the beginning, death like fiction is brutal in its symmetry, and it has this little kind of like blurb thing at the beginning, which I actually thought was really nice. It opens up the book in a kind of, like really cool way. But then the first page begins, and the thing that gets me is it says, I have no doubt that the sudden onset of my anxiety had everything to do with the lie. And the lie is written in italics. And at this point we don't know what the lie is, we just know that she has anxiety. And it's just so melodramatic. It really sets the tone for the rest of the book. And this could have been such a good example of people doing stupid things for no reason. It even goes on to say, like Audrey never has a reason for why she told this lie about Anna that kind of sparked the rest of the novel. She never explains it. But people do that in real life. Sometimes they just lie, or they do stupid things, or they say stupid things. And this could have been, like a good example of that. Another thing that I had an issue with was some of the description. While some of it is nice, quite a lot of it, especially at the beginning, is a really cliche. It's talking about Lucy, and it says, her smile was like a burst of sunlight piercing through a rain cloud, which is just one of the most cliche similes I've ever heard in my life. Same as the way it talks about Candela, where Lucy was soft like a watercolour, Candela was bold and headstrong. She carried herself like a storm or a melodrama. Like, it's just very cliche. It's nothing new. It doesn't help me picture the characters any better. Another thing that I did not particularly enjoy was the relationship that Audrey has with her mother. The reason I didn't enjoy it isn't because of the fact they have a bad relationship, but just because of the way that it was written makes it seem very hard to believe. There's lots of screaming between them, and it's kind of like a flick of a switch and they're screaming suddenly. You know, like there's no, you know, like it doesn't feel tense. There's no build up to these kind of like sudden outbursts, which, you know, like of course that kind of thing does happen in real life, but it just seems so like surface level. Like her mother is so unwilling to believe her in everything, and then we find out later some of her, you know, like her mother's backstory, the reason behind things, but that doesn't really change the relationship between them much. It's just kind of Audrey being like, oh, I hate my mother, she's so annoying, and she keeps bringing up, you know, like the way that her mother like left her father and then came back years ago. She keeps bringing that up, and that's clearly like a trigger for her mother, but they never really talk about that much and never really like resolve the issue, like the issues that they're having together. It's just kind of forgotten, just another thing in the novel that's brought up and then never fully explained. It gets kind of 3/4 of the way and then it just drops off. Another thing that I really did not like was Candela's whole character, basically. There was so much potential there, but she was so much just a tool to further Audrey's character development, which is just such a shame. Like, I mean, I said before, Audrey finds Candela's, like a picture of Candela in Anna's locket that she, you know, like had with her at all times. That's never explained. Candela then goes on to have kind of like a mental breakdown. She starts taking drugs, she doesn't take care of herself, and then suddenly she does, and then suddenly she leaves, and then suddenly she's married, and there's no, like, you never really find out why or anything like that. Audrey basically isn't there for her through the entire thing. They don't believe her, they don't try and help her. Even when she ends up in a coma, she's just kind of like, oh, I'll never do it again. But, you know, like, there's none of the, like, the depth that could be there to kind of make the character more believable and, you know, I don't even have the words. The thing about this book that really does rub me the wrong way is the ending. It's just very odd. It doesn't seem to fit with any of the rest of the novel. It's not a plot twist that makes you go, oh my gosh, I never saw that coming, but it makes perfect sense. I felt as though the ending was kind of like a scapegoat for their actions. And there's just no, you don't find out anything, really. It's just this faux poignant ending that's kind of like, oh, true love means sacrificing everything for another person. I don't know if it's meant to be making some comment on like the redeeming, like, you know, like love is a redeeming feature, but it doesn't really seem like it. Instead it just appears as though it's just basically romanticizing the relationship that Audrey and Rad end up with, which is something that's very kind of like codependent and obsessive. So basically, when it comes to Sad Girls by Lang Leav, there are some good things, there are quite a lot of bad things, in my opinion. I know some people, well, I'm sure that some people would really enjoy this. If you've read her poetry and you really liked it, maybe you would be able to, I don't know, like enjoy the style a little bit more than I did personally. If you did read this and you agree, please comment down below. If you read it and you disagree, please comment, because I would love to hear someone kind of like fight for this book and tell me all the ways that they loved it, to kind of help me consider it maybe a little bit more, because like I said, I found the first 100 pages really hard, and then the rest of it I found was kind of more like okay, like I was a little bit more forgiving. But I don't know, maybe if I just don't know. I would love to hear someone defend this, please. Defend this in the comments and give me a reason why maybe I should like reread it or something. Aside from that, I will see you all in the next video, and good luck for the booktubeathon if you are doing that. Feel free to contact me. All of my links are also in the description below, like my Goodreads and, you know, like all that kind of stuff, and you can message me on there. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!